So today's video is going to be something a little different. I'm sitting down with Peter from Thai Legal Protection, and I've got a bunch of questions for him. We're going to go over everything from visas to starting up a business to how to own a home here. We'll also go into things like scams and what to look out for and what to avoid living here in Thailand. So this is Peter from Thai Legal Protection, and today I'm going to sit down. We're just going to ask a bunch of questions, commonly asked questions, I think, things around like visas and home ownership and business ownership and what to do in the worst case scenarios. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Adam.
Looking forward to it.
Pleasure.
Cheers. All right, so the first question I have for you is, if someone wants to come here and start a business, what is required? What do they need to know? What do they need to look out for?
Okay. So the first thing that people need to know when they want to open up a business in Thailand is how the shareholder or share structure is. And so the most important thing to know is that if you are a foreigner, you know, unless you're American, you can't own 100% of that business. So you have to have a Thai person that will own 51% of it. Okay.
Did you say unless an American?
Yeah.
Americans can own 100%?
Yeah, there's something called, there's a treaty called the Amity Treaty. So Americans can own, be the majority shareholder in a Thai company as long as they have a special license in addition to registering the company.
Okay. Is that hard to get, that license?
No, it's not hard. Usually it takes a couple of weeks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then for the structure, so you said it needs to be 51% owned by a Thai person.
Yeah.
Can you split that between people? Like, could you have two Thai people that essentially own 51% together?
Yeah.
And then,
no, normally not. So
you can't be the majority.
Yeah. So you got the Thai person that is the majority shareholder, and there used to be a rule where you had to have a minimum of 3 shareholders in a company.
Right.
But now only 2 is required. You can have more though. So but basically you can have like 51% Thai person and then 49%. As a foreigner. Yeah, and then there's certain things that you can do to kind of make that a little bit better for you, because obviously you can see how that wouldn't be a good situation for some foreigners to be in. So like there's things called preferential shares where you can set up the share structure so that the one vote, right? One vote or one share or one share is like 10 votes, in the shareholder meetings. So there's these ways that you can structure the shares to make it better if you are the foreigner as a minority shareholder. Yeah. But I guess the big takeaway is that if you know who's going to be that Thai shareholder. And so there's something called nominees, which is a very it's pretty much an illegal process.
Is that what's happening in Phuket at the moment?
Yeah, there's a lot of that happening down there because people want to, foreigners want to buy property. That's one way that a foreigner can buy property, if they buy it through a company. Right, yeah. Yeah.
That's something I will ask you because I do want to get into buying property. Do you, does your service offer anything like contracts or whatever to help you avoid having the rug pulled out from under you, like if you have a Thai partner or whatever and things go south?
Well, we have a personal plan, which is $795 Thai baht per month, and under that personal plan, you can actually explore opening up a company, go through all the process, talk about your scope of work, talk about the shareholder structure that you would like. If you don't have a Thai person to be that shareholder as an investor, then we'll be able to talk with you about some options that are gonna be less risky than if you just this is just an unknown Thai person that my lawyer found,
right? Yeah.
And you're gonna pay them to be that find that person for you. So we don't do any of that, right? But there are just some ways, one of the things that we recommend the guys to do is if they've got a Thai wife, obviously that's the first choice, right? Or a longtime girlfriend that they trust, that to be the partner in the company. But if you don't have those things, then it's really difficult to open up a company here without that nominee structure, and it's very risky to do that. So.
And can you put contracts in place to ensure that they can't ever take that from you? Or is that
well, I don't want to get into that too much, but yeah, there are some things that you can put in place to protect yourself from that type of a structure, like the preferential shares that we talked about a minute ago, joint venture agreements. But what the main takeaway from this should be that we don't want to we want to avoid having people, you know, open up companies and just have a random Thai person be that nominee, you know, because that's just highly illegal. Like you mentioned in Phuket, right?
Yeah, that's happening a lot, right?
A lot of law firms get closed down because they open up thousands of those companies and they use those companies, you know, they're being used to buy properties. So
interesting.
Yeah, so you know, that's the main reason why people open up companies in these touristy spots. Yeah, with the exception of maybe Pattaya, but like on the islands and stuff, a lot of people want to buy property down there, and so they just can't if they don't have a Thai company.
That's right. So I'll jump into that because I did want to ask you about property stuff. So a foreigner can own, and correct me about my knowledge here, to the best of my knowledge, a foreigner can own a condo here, but to own a house, you need to do it through a company. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's not like you need to, you have no choice because, you know, so it's pretty easy for the condos. There's a just like the shareholders in a company, right? So the condos, you know, certain percentage of those condos are available to everybody, and then a certain percentage are just available for foreigners, right? So we call it foreign quota. So for buying a condo, it's very easy, right? So you know, as long as it's available for foreign quota, then you can just buy it outright. And you know, we don't recommend that foreigners look at condos that aren't under foreign quota, because then that would involve buying into a company, which could be problematic. Now, for property, you know, basically that's one of the only ways that you can buy property as a foreigner is if it's done through a company. But some of the guys who are married will have, you know, they'll have the property under the wife's name, and then they'll have like, you know, for the house structure itself, you know, maybe they'll have a long-term lease, like a really long lease that, so in, you know,
to themselves.
You know, that property, the house will be leased by him from his partner.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's a very long lease, and so he feels comfortable because he's not, you know, he's going to be, you know, guaranteed a place to stay if something happens, right? But those are just things that, you know, to do things like that, you have to make sure that you trust your wife, you know. And if
I've heard all the horror stories.
Yeah, there's tons of horror stories, right? So, like, you know, if possible, like, obviously the ideal situation is, you know, if you're buying a condo, buy one under foreign quota. If you want to buy property, it's good that if you buy it with your partner, you know, that you trust, or, you know, if you already own a company, right, and the you know, the investor is a real Thai person that actually is your real partner, like what we have here, right? So then you'll be able to just buy that property under the company name, and because you're a shareholder in the company along with your partner, then it's easy, right, for that thing, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you know, you just got to be really careful about that nominee shareholder, because it could get you, if the law firm that sets it up for you gets caught, then its clients will be impacted by that. So you just got to be careful.
Okay. So then, if someone did want to come out here, and let's just say they were opening a bar, what would be the visa that they would look at getting for that?
Okay.
To stay here.
Yeah. Okay. So there's, you know, if you want to know about the type of visa when you open up any business, okay? So it's a non-immigrant B visa, and then a work permit. So those are the two types of things. But if you're married to a Thai person, then you could actually go with your Thai wife visa. So we call this, you know, that's the layman term, right? But it's non-immigrant O visa based on being married to a Thai person. Okay, and that visa allows you to just, you know, your employer is just going to deal with only the work permit.
Okay.
But it's mostly like the non-immigrant B visa or the non-O visa based on being married to a Thai.
Owning or setting up a business here, does that make that process easier to obtain that visa, or?
The visa process for the company, as in the non-immigrant B visa, could be very complicated because it is, you know, it all ties together with the registered capital, like I told you about, of 2 million baht and the 4 Thai staff. I think the biggest challenge people have when they open up a business to get their work permit is that they have to hire 4 Thai staff, pay at least the minimum wage, make sure that the social security remittances are done. There's an employee contribution and also an employer contribution.
And my next question is, in regards to like renting condos, what are your most commonly asked questions? Like, what do people come to you for?
Well, I guess renting the condos mostly about the agreements. So in other words, you know, they want us to check their agreements before they sign. But one of the things that we encourage people to do is, before you even get the agreement, be well versed in the condo laws, so that way you know when you go out looking for a condo that you know what red flags there are to look for. If you see some red flags, I'll just give you the basic, the basic thing. What you wouldn't think this would ever be a problem, right? But it really is. So if you have, let's say you get your neighborhood agent, right? And you want them to find you a condo, right? So they find you a nice condo, you love it, you want to move in. So, but you never see the owner. You never, ever see the owner. And nobody ever thinks, does that owner know this condo's being rented out? So as you know, a few months ago, there was that huge condo scam in Pattaya, where the juristic office had an employee working in there. She rented out a ton of condos, and the long story short is many people found out that the owners weren't aware. So how do you ensure that the owner is aware that you're moving into the condo, right? So obviously witnessing the signature between, on the contract, that's something that you would never think is a problem, but it is. Second thing, it's called a chenote. So we'll just use in the layman's terms, the title deed of the condo, right? Does that match the name of the landlord on the contract? So these are the basic things. On the contract, you should have the banking details of the owner as well too. If those banking details are different than the banking details of the owner, right?
There's someone in the middle then.
Yeah, and so we don't, of course there's somebody in the middle, but we have to just ensure that this money goes to the owner,
right.
Or that owner's approved that the deal goes down like this. So they've appointed a representative to sign the contract and collect the rent, for example. So show me that evidence. Well, then there's a power of attorney that person would need to make to the real estate agent, for example, that allows that condo agent to sign the contract, not in the landlord's name, but their own name, and then acting as the landlord of the condo, and then also collecting the rent, right? Because maybe the owner's living in Australia or Germany and doesn't have time for that. So that he just hires this property company or this real estate agent to manage that property for him. That's very common. So as long as you see those basic things, if the owner's there to sign, great. If not, the only way you're going to know if that owner signed the contract is if they're sitting in front of you. So if you don't see that, then that's not good. So really, you need to see a power of attorney if that's the case. And sometimes that can even be forged. So you just have to find a way to get in touch with the owner of the condo, make sure that their ID matches the name on the chenote, the title deed, and then make sure that okay, is it, are you going to be is this rent going to you? Yeah, here's my account number in Thailand or whatever, right? So, oh no, it's going to the agent because I've hired them. Okay, well, here's the power of attorney. So it's always good if you can actually get to speak to the owner, either on the phone or on a video call or something, but that's very difficult to happen sometimes. So you just got to, but those are just the basic things, right? You would think that is something that people wouldn't, it's common sense, but actually that's the biggest thing people get caught out on, right? Is they end up, many horror stories where people have had to leave a condo because the owner didn't know that they were living there. People are always asking, why do I have to pay 2 months security deposit, right? So if the condo owner is renting condos out as a business and they own 5 or more condos that they're doing that on, they're not supposed to charge you 2 months security deposit, only 1. But the problem is that sometimes the first problem is that if you're dealing with an agent, that's how the agent normally gets paid. They keep 1 month's deposit, and then the owner keeps the other month, and then the first month's rent. So it's difficult to get behind, to get around that because of that. Second thing is that if you rent high value property, the assets inside are very expensive, especially if you're in a place like Pattaya, right? There's always horror stories of condo owners where you have their places trashed, because Pattaya is like a party area, right?
Yeah.
So they often will refuse to rent with 2 months security, without that being paid. I mean,
right.
So at that point, yes, it's against the law if they're a business. But maybe they just won't rent to you if you don't agree to it. So even though that's the law, if they make it clear and both parties agree to it, then actually they can still go ahead through it with that transaction.
Okay.
And it's up to the person that, the tenant, if they want to rent from that landlord or not, right? Okay. So you can't, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you can't go say to the landlord, by law, I found out that you rent 6 condos out as a business. I'm not going to pay 2 months security deposit. Well, what's he going to do? He's going to say, okay, well, then don't rent from me.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't say it's against the law, but these things might come up in a dispute. Mm-hmm. So that would lead me to the next thing where people contact us about not getting their deposit back. And one of the clauses that we maintain that should be in a contract is that you get your deposit back minus damage or wear and tear within 7 days after you leave the place.
Oh, interesting.
So that's part of that new law, but even though condo owners are not obliged to follow that law, if they own only one condo that they rent out, there's still a lot of those laws that we think are very good to still put in all rental contracts. Mm. So that is the most important one, right? Obviously, and doing the final check of the place when you leave together with the owner or the agent. Mm-hmm. So there's no surprises, right? When you leave and then a month goes by, you didn't get your deposit back, you call and the owner says, or the agent says, well, you damaged this, you damaged that, you damaged, and you're like, no, I didn't, but you have no evidence. It's too late. You're already gone. So it's he said, she said. Right? Mm-hmm. So those are very important things. So I guess that's the main thing is the deposits and why we had to pay 2 months security and then fraud.
So just recently I did an update video on the DTV Visa, mm-hmm. which is not out yet. It's a hot topic here at the moment. The 60 days on arrival is not yet happening. I had my mate Sam just came back yesterday. Yeah, sure. He only got the 30 stamp. Mm-hmm. I said in my video, let's just wait till we have all the information. We're not sure when that's going to be. So essentially we don't have the answers yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation. And so we just basically tell everybody to wait.
Wait, yeah.
When you wait until it's announced officially. And we don't have any idea. We're hoping by the end of this month. A hot topic, when you're under 50, what type of visa can you get? Yeah,
and I guess we probably don't have the answer for that yet. They advertise it as you don't have to pay tax here, but if you're here more than 180 days, you become a tax resident.
That's right? A huge thing right now that's trending with expats and how that tax law that came out at the beginning of this year.
Would you want to dive into that a little bit?
I don't mind, yeah. Sure, yeah.
Because that is a...
Sure, yeah. So as you know before, there was... actually, there's always been a law in place that says that if you spend 180 days during a calendar year in Thailand, then you become a tax resident. But it was never enforced. Mm. So then they made some changes to that this year where the money that you bring in doesn't matter whether it was brought in that current year or brought in that was earned in a previous tax year. Now it's still going to be included in that. So what's happened is they still haven't put out any enforcement guidelines.
Right. Yeah.
So right now in place, there is only one way that the government enforces expats to pay tax, and that's when you have a work permit. So you have a work permit, and then you have to do your work permit renewal.
Yeah.
And then when you do that work permit renewal, normally there's a little comment, remark on the work permit that says when you renew your work permit, you got to show evidence that your personal income tax was filed and whatever money that you've had to pay. If you had to pay, then you got the receipt, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way that it has to be regulated and enforced right now. But there's no enforcement for retirees right now. There's no enforcement for someone who's married but they don't have a job here. Mm-hmm. And so people are really scared because this is always with expats that they're just they're expecting the worst on enforcement, whether it be through their retirement visa process or whether it be through their bank or another way, when they leave the country. And they're used. In fact, the law is still in place where you had to get a tax clearance certificate in the past if you lived here on some type of a resident visa before you left, right? But they don't enforce that anymore. So now it's just coming down to enforcement, and until we know those enforcement guidelines, it's just we're always going to be in this gray area where we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. We just know that if we follow the law, we should be getting a tax ID and we should be filing. Whether you got to pay will depend on what country you're from and your personal income situation,
right,
what you've brought into the country. And then they added a little thing to that later where Thailand wants to start using some worldwide tax system. And then it's just more scaremongering and people are like freaking out about this. So
yeah, but none of that's actually being enforced.
Well, right now, all I can say is that there's no enforcement guidelines right now. So, you know, expats are trying to make decisions about their future here, and they can't because they don't have the actual enforcement guidelines.
Right.
And so if nobody's asking them to pay, then they don't know what's going to happen if I don't follow it.
That's right, yeah.
So, you know, what we suggest is just let's wait and see what the enforcement guidelines, if any, come out. Some people have a lot of money, though, you know, on the other hand, riding on this. So some people will make a decision to leave, maybe, or they will make another decision to spend half a year outside of the country instead of the full year, right? Because they're really afraid. And some of them have a lot of money on the line. You know, there's some people that have tax, you know, that have income that's not taxed at the source. So they don't want to pay tax on it. You know?
Yeah. And is there any, I guess there's no guidelines yet on what counts as bringing money in? Like if I have money in an Australian bank account that I'm spending here, is that bringing money in? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's coming into the country. Where you're basically withdrawing it from the ATM, right? Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why people, maybe there's something we could talk about, but a lot of people want to open up a Thai bank account. And some of them might shy away from that because that's another way that they could enforce it possibly. Because they've tracked the money coming in, right? Yeah, and there's benefits to opening up a Thai bank account. So, you know, but there's just that everybody's scared about this new tax law and they don't know what to do. You know, so, you know, some people are taking action now, some people are waiting.
Yeah, the Thai bank account's great. I have a Thai bank. It's a really difficult process nowadays. I know back during, like, towards the end of the pandemic, they were letting anyone get bank accounts here.
Oh, okay.
But that sort of ended and you need to show, like, your work permit and I had to give them a ton of paperwork to get mine. I think a work permit, my lease details, possibly a TM30 or something like that as well.
Yeah, the resident certificate.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up. But so now it's really difficult to open a bank account on a tourist visa.
Can you do it at all?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you could even do it at all.
Yeah, so we have a way to do it on a tourist visa. And we can actually teach our members to do it by themselves, but most of them don't want to do it by themselves because it entails going to 6, 7, 8 branches before you find one that'll do it for you.
Yeah.
But basically, it's open up account if you're on a resident visa, like say, Thai wife visa, or you're in a company. Well, the company one is easy. You have a work permit.
Yeah.
They don't even ask you for that resident certificate. But let's say you're married to a Thai, so you need a resident certificate. Sometimes they want to see your lease agreement. Sometimes they want to see a second piece of ID from your home country, plus your passport. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like they wanted a ton from me. I had a whole stack.
But we can help people open up accounts on tours.
Okay, so that's the service that you offer.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll just quickly jump in. This is a question that I see come up. Have you seen, there's the trend on YouTube at the moment of people that make those channels where they're like walking around filming people and filming people in public. There's Facebook pages, Instagram pages, all that. Can you quickly discuss the legalities of that if you're...
Well, so what I can tell you is that if you do film somebody without their permission in public, then they could sue you, right? They could sue you. And it's like the data protection. It's under that type of scenario, and the Copyright Act as well too. So I guess the best way forward with that is if somebody notices that they've been filmed by a YouTuber and they hopefully politely ask to have their face blurred, then you guys should just do it as a courtesy. But sometimes people don't ask nicely.
To the best of my knowledge, the law is, because it's sort of changed like a year or two ago, and it's okay to film a public setting of a lot of people, but filming a person as the subject of your video is where it becomes...
But no, generally in public, you can film it whatever you want, as long as it's just like for instance, you could stick your camera on a corner and people are going to walk by.
That's right.
Yeah, there's not too much anybody can do to you if they get caught in that video.
But the creepy guy with the zoom lens, that's a
you got to be careful about that. But yeah, you know, there's different ways that they could sue you under the Copyright Act, under the Data Protection Act, or depending on the situation, you know, just being a nuisance, right? Yeah, which is a small criminal charge, right? So there's been a lot of examples of YouTubers that have been caught in, you know, disputes like that. So yeah, I just tell the guys, listen, if somebody is polite and asks you to remove them from the video or blur their face, then just do it. But if they come across like very confrontational, just try to get out of that situation as quickly as possible.
So my next question is, if someone finds themselves in trouble or in a, not even necessarily like in legal trouble, but find themselves in a sticky situation, what do you recommend as the process that people...
Well, I guess it depends on the situation, but so I'll just tell you that if you find yourself in a situation where you've committed a crime, obviously you should... well, you know, you obviously shouldn't commit a crime, but if you've done something wrong, you really need to get in touch with a lawyer. And so we have a 24-hour emergency line that people can call if they get in trouble with the police. One of the biggest things is an accident that they've gone in, maybe they've hit somebody while they're driving their motorcycle or their car. And so, you know, contacting a lawyer is obviously, you don't want to try to navigate the legal system here by yourself. So if you do get arrested for something, or you do find yourself with some type of a problem, then yeah, you should contact a lawyer. And I think people associate lawyers with, you know, well, that's going to be expensive. So what we have is something a little bit different, which we'll talk about, I guess, after, where you can have that service without spending a lot of money.
And then, like, so say if someone did get arrested, do you recommend they call you from the police station straight away? Yeah. Sure.
Our 24-hour emergency line allows for that. So basically, if something happens where you're arrested, and let's just use like that, you know, I think on Soy 6 there's always a lot of disputes. So instead of, you know, you really don't want to escalate the situation if that happens to you. But if it does get out of hand, you can call up the emergency line, and one of our lawyers will talk with you, talk with the police. And then after that, maybe they'll need to calm down. No, that's not included in our service. You have to pay extra for that. But that's important. You know, we can come down and represent you.
Awesome. Can you tell us a bit about the services that you offer?
Oh, sure. Okay, so we have this legal membership at 795 Thai baht per month. There's no contract, so members can keep it or they can cancel it. If they're tourists, they can pause it and then activate it when they come back. If they're an expat, expats usually keep it, you know, while they're in Thailand. And so basically it allows you to call in and get legal advice on any topic related to Thai law, or taking a spouse or girlfriend back to your home country. That's included in that as well. Opening up a business is included in that as well. One of the biggest things that we do is we look at condo agreements before people sign them to make sure everything's legitimate and the contract's fair for both parties and follows the law. We resolve disputes on our members' behalf by either a legal notice or by making a phone call. And then after that, we have our 24-hour emergency line. So accidents or trouble with the police. It's been really busy these last few weeks with accidents, unfortunately. And
coming into wet season?
Yeah, well, it could be that, or it just could be just a trend. I don't know what it is, but you know, sometimes things happen all at once, right? You know, but it's mostly, you know, people riding in on a motorcycle and they hit somebody, or vice versa in a car, right? So there's that. For the expats, for the long-term expats, the membership includes a last will and a living will. Yeah, and then the last thing is a special medical card that people stick in their wallets, and if they're unconscious, so that member will keep their emergency contact details with us and their travel insurance with us. And then if they're in that situation, the authorities will see that card and they'll call us up, and we'll just, you know, give them all those details to help the guy out. And that person will sign a consent form so that it allows us to store that data and share it only to people that need it. You know? Yeah. So that's the basics of our service. And I think most people, the majority of people right now, are using it for visas and using it for renting and buying property, and then just to have that peace of mind when they're here as a tourist.
Awesome.
24-hour emergency line. Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
So that's basically it.
Thank you. I'll leave a link down in the description, all the information to Thai Legal Protection. I've been working with you guys for a while now, so I definitely recommend the company, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.